All right, so we're going to call to order the meeting of today and being Thursday, December 15th, 2024. December 5th. I'm sorry, December 5th. Yeah, very much so. We're going to begin with the introductions and with the steering committee and the guests and invitees. From there, we're going to move on to public comment, announcements, thereafter shared news, events, questions, and concerns. Starting with the introduction, I'll start. My name is Romeo von Herman. I am a member of the steering committee for Ward 6. And I also serve on the Church Street Marketplace Commission. I do work at Green Mountain Transit as the station manager. And yeah, it's a very exciting place to live and work. And I guess, Nancy, you're next.
I was going to let Mills go. Nancy Harkins.
Mills Forney.
Dale Azaria, and we should have said Nancy Mills and I are all also on the steering committee along with Romeo, and our last steering committee member I think is online.
Anita, go ahead.
Yes, I am online. My name is Anita. I'm on the steering committee.
Thank you, Anita. And we're also going to go.
Oh,
Yes.
Representative Mary Catherine Stone, Chittenden 14.
Rep. Tiff Bloomley, Chittenden 13.
Alan Matson, resident.
Faith Inglesrud, resident.
Eric Avildsen, resident.
Diane Gayer, resident.
Jack Evans, resident. Braden DeForge, resident.
Nick Anderson, Champlain College.
Graham Klepner, resident and representative-elect.
Thank you. And we also have
Zach Nersinger, City of Burlington, CEDO.
Charlie behind the camera.
Yeah, Charlie G, CCTV.
All right. Thanks for the introduction. Anybody online that we have that may want to introduce themselves?
Adrian just joined.
Adrian, if you can hear us, go ahead, please. Or unmute as well. All right, we're going to go with the call for any public comments and announcements.
Thank you, Romeo. Alan Matson. I'm also an inspector of elections. And first off, I'd like to say thanks to, I see a number of people here who worked the elections in November. Really appreciate it. We had great turnout. We had many people who were interested in working for the elections, and many people who were, we didn't even end up having space to work the elections. So that's great. I would like to point out that in March, there will be definitely the clerk will be up for election, and one of our 3 inspector seats will be up for election. Greg Epler-Wood, who has been our clerk, will be ending his term. He's, I think, done 2, maybe 3 terms. And I currently am planning on running for clerk in March. Everyone is welcome to challenge me. We'd love to have elections, but I will state that I am running for clerk in March. That means I will be stepping down as an inspector. That means that we think there'll be 2 seats open actually for inspectors in March. We do have a couple people who have expressed interest already. And, we welcome others as well. I think that Ward 6 has been blessed by having a good number of people who really care about elections, making them work volunteer. Well, we're paid, so it's not really volunteering, but stepping forward to work elections, both in the elected positions, the inspectors and the clerk, as well as the assistant election officers who work on day of. So we really appreciate everybody's support for running the great elections in Ward 6. So thank you all. And if you're interested, you can find ways of getting a hold of me or anyone online. It's in the similar area to where you can read about the NPAs. You can read about the elections and the seats. So just wanted to talk about that. Thanks.
You. Any additional public comments and announcements?
Yeah, I just wanted to announce a couple of an upcoming event and a meeting. This Monday, which is December 9th at 6:30, College Street Congregational Church is hosting a filming of The Hungry Heart, which is a documentary by Bess O'Brien, a Vermont filmmaker. It's regarding the opioid crisis and what was done by one doctor in St. Albans to address it. It's a very positive, hopeful documentary, and it will be followed by a panel discussion, including the doctor and a couple of other people who are featured in the documentary. So that's it's free and open to the public. That's Monday at 6:30. And the mayor's next public safety forum is going to be on Thursday, January 9th at 5:30 in Contois in City Hall. And then a meeting that will not be happening is the January Ward 6 NPA meeting will not be occurring on our normal day, which would be January 2nd. We are looking at the possibility of having a meeting combining with Ward 5 later in the month to talk about what will be on the ballot for town meeting day. But more to come about that. We'll keep you posted in Front Porch Forum, but we will not be meeting on January 2nd.
Right, any additional comments or announcements? Yes, please, go ahead.
Quick announcement from CETO, just a reminder, I think we've mentioned it here before. We have an online survey that's live right now through January 3rd for the Memorial Block redevelopment project. It's a continuation of the open house meeting that we held in September. It's about getting the community's feedback on potential civic space uses in that proposed redevelopment project that's in its very early stages. So we're trying to collect early public engagement throughout that process. That survey is on the CETO homepage on the city's website. Feel free to make your way there, participate in the survey. It's very quick. We've had about 260 responses so far, so I'm very pleased with the turnout. Anyone who's interested, please direct them to our website, and it's probably a 5-minute survey. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Final call for any news, events, questions, and concerns. Please go ahead. Sure. Yep, absolutely.
So I looked at the survey. I wasn't able to go to the public meeting.
Oh, okay, the open house. Sure. Okay, great question. So in that block, I can best say it this way. It's really the Main Street frontage. So we're looking at the parking lot, the small building in between. There's a couple of little infill lots there. And then there's the Memorial Auditorium itself. The library and the church are to remain. There may be some, if again, this is all conceptual, but if something happens, maybe there's some parking improvements or green space improvements between those two uses. And the firehouse, Fire Station 1 would stay, but it would be some maybe perhaps built around or improved. Again, real. The smaller lots on Main Street, yep. All of its property. Not the fire station would remain, just as I said with the library.
It seems like, how do you supporting here? It's saying, okay, well, firehouse is going to change, but it's not in our question yet. Only this.
Yeah, and so that's why I'm trying to say it's very early on in the process. What we're trying to look at in a perfect world is like, what type of outdoor uses might you want to see in whatever green space is developed to activate some green space in that block, but also if we envision Main Street being redeveloped with a new building, a mixed-use building that has ground floor commercial, has apartments, perhaps a hotel component, and some sort of programmed space that could be leased out for public uses, civic uses. What types of programs and uses do you think could be successful there? Again, it's just kind of, we're feeling it out, want to see what the community has to say. I know we've probably gone through this process a few times before, so we have a lot of information from past efforts.
That way. Agree. This is totally open-ended, as opposed to saying, no. Tell us about green space. Tell us about public use. Tell us about private use. That's what we're deciding, and that would be helpful in that.
We'll take that in consideration as we keep going along. This, like I said, this survey's got a few more weeks to go. I don't want to completely rework it. We tried to use a lot of the imagery that was presented at the open house to guide the responses to that. Okay. Well, I'll definitely take that in consideration, but also if now that you know more about it, you're welcome just to submit an email. If the survey doesn't work for you, you're welcome to submit public comments to CEDO or myself at any time. And we'll also include that in the responses. Yep.
All right, so thank you so much. We're going to move on to connect with our counselors. We have Counselor Shannon, and I'm not sure if Counselor McKnight is here yet. She's not coming. Okay. All right, we're going to be talking about the conduct conversion ordinance, dock task force report ordinance change, holiday accommodation downtown, and the downtown health report. We have our Counselor Shannon here, and go whenever you're ready. Hi, how are you? Good. Good. Oh, there we go. Sorry.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I think I talked a little bit about the condo conversion ordinance at the last meeting. And, we, at least some of us would like to make it easier to convert rental units to condominiums because there was good reason that this ordinance was put in place at the time that it was put in place, because there had been private funding of subsidized housing that was only at the end of 25 years, the private owners could then convert them to condominiums and displace the low-income tenants at places like Northgate. But according to Brian Pine, those funding mechanisms have all come to term now. So we don't have that situation anymore. And coupled with that, the financing to build new projects, it's very hard to build them as condominiums because the secondary market says you have to pre-sell 50% or more of them. Whereas if you're renting them, they just give you the money. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to pre-sell. And that's why consequently, almost all of the new construction around town is rental housing. This has resulted in 70% of our housing, only 30% is owner occupied and 70% is rental. And you may know some young people in our community who would love to buy their first home and feel like they will never get there. So enabling condominium conversions is a way that we can accommodate some people to buy their first home who are renters today. But there is some discomfort. There's a lot of discomfort from people like who live at Northgate because they know that this ordinance was put in place to protect people like them. And so when they see it disappearing, they're very uncomfortable. It makes them feel very threatened. So we've kind of taken a step back on that. And I'm going to go with Sarah Carpenter, who has had a career in affordable housing, and talk to folks at Northgate and hopefully allay people's concerns. I mean, I'm not going to say that it's going to be perfect. Every time a rental unit sells, this is problematic for the tenants who live there, whether it converts to a condominium or it does. But there are things in place that even with the new ordinance, with the old ordinance, you could get $1,000 from the landlord if you could demonstrate that you had $1,000 of relocation costs. The new ordinance would double that to $2,000 and you don't have to prove anything. It's just, here is your $2,000 and you could use that $2,000 towards a down payment on actually buying the unit. So we're still doing some work on that, mostly community work, to get people more comfortable, I hope. And maybe we will tweak it before it actually comes back to the table. So that's where that is. Also the dog task force report, that is also in the ordinance committee that Becca and I both serve on. And there's many, I mean, it's a lengthy report with lots of changes, but the thing that I think is going to be of concern to many community members who are likely to feel strongly one way or the other are cat licensing and whether or not cats should be allowed to roam, licensed or not. And so our committee has not expressed any opinion one way or another on this. We have agreed to hear from the public. And that is going to be on either January 9th or January 23rd, depending on when we can get Contoy's Auditorium. But you are always welcome to weigh in on that and anything else outside of a public hearing. The members of the ordinance committee are myself, Councillor McKnight, and Jean Bergman. Let's see. Another thing that we had on here was holiday accommodations and downtown health report. Mayor had come out with a report. I don't know. Oh, unfortunately, that was not true. It was an error, and we have been waiting since that time to have corrected numbers to find out what are our gross receipts. Critically important because we made a decision. The administration didn't want to implement the full tax increase that was approved by the voters. That we implemented part of that tax increase and we doubled the gross receipts tax. Because we still needed the money, even though we weren't implementing it on the property taxpayers. The gross receipts tax is a much more volatile tax than the property tax is. So we all knew that when we did that, we are all now invested in the health of our hospitality industry by doing that. And so we expect. I checked just before on our city council agenda and the Board of Finance. I can't really report on the downtown health way that I was hoping to be able to report to you about now. But I think that what is plain for all of us to see is that our downtown is struggling with the social things that we have. Places struggling with, but we are struggling more than most places. And on top of that, the construction, the difficulty in navigating downtown. At our last meeting, we have been contacted by some downtown business owners who alerted us that the plan for the Main Street project was avenue, so that you could not go down there, you could not go left or right on South Winooski. And the council was quite vocal about the desperate need to do something about that. And Director Chapin Spencer rightly noted that our contract does not allow us to require the contractor to do something else. But I think that the pressure from businesses, from the council, and really the pleading, thankfully, SD Ireland has agreed to keep that intersection open, to make some accommodations. And they, of course, they have to keep their workers employed and the project moving. So this is a real challenge for them. And I'm really grateful to SD Ireland for working with us when honestly they didn't have to, but it's so important for our downtown. So we've done that part. Now it's up to you. I hope you will all go downtown. I was there for the lighting ceremony on Friday after Thanksgiving, which is our family tradition. It felt wonderful. And I hope that you will all go downtown. There's a lovely little setup in City Hall Park with the little artist pods, and it changes. I think it's open Thursday, Friday through Sunday. Okay. Yeah. But really go downtown, enjoy Church Street. It is still there. It is still what we have always loved, and please enjoy it and remember that. Good news, on our agenda for Monday, BED, we're going to be accepting a grant to install up to 200 electric vehicle chargers around town. So I think there's a 20% match on this, but that is going to be really nice to have a lot more electric vehicle chargers. And that is about it for me. Well, questions?
I have a question I can start with. I do have an electric car, and is it free to charge?
No, I believe they charge you. Sorry. Nothing in life is free, Romeo.
You didn't get the message, we need money.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. All right, any additional questions for the counselor or concerns?
Also about the chargers. I'm wondering.
Now it's on. Thank you. So my question is also about the EV chargers, and I'm wondering if you know anything or if BED is putting anything out about kind of what the strategy and thought process is, because most people who are homeowners, of course, charge at home. Or do most of their charging at home. So I'm wondering if these are going to be prioritized, like for places where there's a lot of renters or apartment buildings, or if they're more like for shoppers or people who are working downtown. Do you know anything about that, or have any idea where we could get that info?
My knowledge is limited to this memo, which I can pass to you, but I'll read you the part. As part of the project, BED is committed to engaging the community and selecting sites for the new public chargers, and will partner with various community organizations to conduct community outreach and solicit community feedback. BED has already received over 80 suggested sites from the public as a result of its EV charger location survey. So I'll pass that to Dale. There might be something else good in there, Dale.
Perfect, sorry.
Do you want it?
Okay, I'll definitely read it. That's okay.
Okay, yeah, you can have it.
Any additional questions or ideas?
Oh, the lineup
Hi.
of wingers here.
So I'm curious who the grant is from for the electric chargers, if you know that, if that's in the memo.
Who's it from, Romeo?
Is it?
U.S. Department of Transportation,
Okay,
Federal
great.
Highway Administration,
Okay.
Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Grant in the amount of 4.89 million.
Awesome. That's great. And there's a 20% match, you said, which hopefully we have a lot of cats.
Rates. So
Okay.
we're all going to help you out on your charging.
So I do have a question about the cat and dog ordinance, which is great. I know I am a cat owner. I have indoor cats, and I know indoor cats theoretically live much longer than outdoor cats. And Burlington has traffic, right? So, but I'm wondering if people, if we have capacity for picking up the many cats that are outside, like what does the ordinance do exactly besides require cats?
We don't have the capacity to do that, but the Humane Society does have a trap, neuter, spay program. And that's what we do in my neighborhood. I have a couple saintly neighbors who have trapped all the cats with the help of the Humane Society. But if we had cat licensing, that makes it a lot easier because we don't necessarily always know whether or not this is your cat, Barbara.
Sure.
So
Right.
the
Yes.
cats got out that day and we
Right.
have now trapped
Sure.
it, neutered it, spayed it, and let it back out.
And I know that both the Humane Society and Queen City Cat Rescue are getting like so many animals right now that have been temporarily surrendered, et cetera, and are struggling with funding. So I just am hoping. It sounds like the ordinance is needed and thoughtful, but just making sure that we don't totally swamp these two nonprofits that are going to be doing that work. So, sorry.
Yeah, you don't want to swamp the nonprofits. I don't know that we're necessarily going on a major cat patrol. But when your unlicensed cat is in my yard, I can call and
Sure.
and then report that cat. We do have holding facilities. So it's a good point. You know, what are we going to do when we
Right,
pick
yeah.
these animals up? So
Anyway.
I'll take it. Yeah.
So thank you.
I'll go. I'm still on the cat tax. This is my favorite topic that we've had, the cat tax. Where do the funds go? Like from the fees? Where will they go to?
Well,
Do you
we
know?
haven't even decided we're doing it. We have no idea what it costs, but there are costs in just operating the programs.
Right.
The dog licensing fee is supposed to be giving money to the dog parks. I'm not sure that we have ever been able to I'm not sure that it is going to the dog parks. And our enforcement of anything is pretty light. So I'm not sure. Right now, dog license fees go into the general fund, but we did pass a resolution designating some of those fees to the dog parks. I don't see it as a big money maker.
I don't either. It's just interesting. And these are the questions that we'll get asked when we go to the State House and we're like, where are those fees going to go? And I can't say like they're building Burlington High School, but I don't know. I'm just interested in it. That's it. I digress. Okay.
This is not a question, actually, Joan. I want to say that, I mean, we attend a lot of NPA meetings together. I can't tune in always to city council meetings. Your summaries are great, and I really feel well informed. Every time I hear your reports, I really appreciate it.
Well,
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was just going to say you should start that cat meeting with the Monty Python fish license skit where they talk about the man with the cat detector van. It's
Can you
amazing.
get a Clip for me. I think that would be a good opener. Maybe lighten the mood between the
It
pro
is.
licensing and anti-licensing folks in the room.
And I believe it is aged okay. There's definitely some Monty Python skits from the 70s which haven't aged well, but this one still holds pretty true for a public meeting.
Okay, I'm going to review that. Thank you. Can I add something? You're going to be, I see on the legislative report asking for input on that. And with still my city council hat on, the chair of the Cannabis Control Board, which I have to say has been one of the least rewarding things I have done on the city council because we have virtually no authority other than to keep rubber stamping everything as long as all the boxes are checked. And I am really discouraged by the lack of control that we have been given. And there was a provision that you can't have retail cannabis within 500 feet of a school. I think we can now see that maybe seemed like a good idea at the time, but you know, in a just outside this 500-foot perimeter, we have 14 cannabis retailers in the city of Burlington. Many of them surrounding our high school. I understand that our high schoolers avail themselves of these services on a regular basis. And unlike liquor control, which I'm also the chair of the liquor control committee. And, you know, there are state people who are looking at our liquor licensees, making sure that they're not serving underage. When they are serving underage, there are consequences, and they're coming to us as the licensing committee to share their concerns with us. But there is no corollary with cannabis control. Who's checking to make sure, you know, that you know, nobody under 21 is being served. Nobody in Burlington. And I really feel I supported legalizing cannabis, but that was with an expectation that we were going to tax it and regulate it. And I'm not sure where the tax money is going. You guys maybe know.
After school programs. After school programs.
Going to after school programs.
Well, I think that it would be really nice if we need more state regulation, but we also need more local control ability for our ability to say no to retailers.
So I was on the committee when I was on the committee when we did legalize, but not necessarily. I wasn't on many different committees looked at it, but it was clearly the intent of the legislature that would be enforced. I mean, and so it's concerning to me to hear that it isn't. I have not heard a lot about that. So is there like no place for someone to call if they learn that somebody is violating?
That's not the way it works with liquor. You don't have to call.
Right. I'm just wondering. I know, but
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know, but I think that we need, with liquor, you have proactive enforcement, not waiting for somebody to report that somebody's.
Right. But still, I would hope at the very least that is a secondary, like, wait, what's going on here? We are, you know, all these 17-year-olds are using fake ID or whatever is happening. Like, I will certainly be looking into it, but I just was curious if anyone's had the experience of making a complaint and if that has been answered.
If we're supposed to call somebody, I don't think that's very well advertised.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Right. I mean, I know we have that problem with tobacco also, which is not great, but that was clearly
the cannabis thing was not supposed to go down that way. And so that's really disappointing to hear that it is.
There's a lot more regulation on tobacco, like in terms of the advertising. And, you know, we don't have that on cannabis. I mean, if you compare cannabis to tobacco, or, you know, if you can just make it more parallel with what we're doing already with tobacco and with liquor, I think we'd be doing fine, but there's a bunch of things that are missing from the system that are in place for those. So we already have the model.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening.
I'm messaging people now.
Any questions for me? Are we done?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you guys will have more questions.
Did I? Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and without further ado, we're going to move on to the next subject, which is the legislative preview. We'll connect with Representative Steve Bloom. I don't know how to say the last name. Bloomley. I apologize. And Bram Klepner and Mary Catherine Stone and Representative Barbara Rachelson. All of you are here. And we also have I believe our Representative-elect as well here. So we'll connect with all of you. What are the top issues? How do you want to be kept informed? And are there ways you would like us to be involved in that work? We can study in Harvard.
Yeah.
And there's going to be dancing. No. So my name's Tiff Bloomley. And I think that, I mean, each of us has, Bram will be assigned a committee, isn't on one yet, but can talk probably about, well, anyway, each of us can talk about the things that we know we will be working on. We also, though, wanted to say at the outset, there are three very clear goals. Subject areas that we're going to dive into and that are top priorities. One is housing and emergency housing and housing development, which involves both, reform of Act 250, further reform, and also building, incentivizing development for different groups of people, affordable and market rate housing. And the next is education finance, and really exploring all our options, which a subcommittee has been looking at, and they've come up with, I think, 23 options that the caucus will be looking at, and then Ways and Means is looking at, which relates directly to property taxes, because this is a pattern that is unlike prior years, and we can't continue on in that way. And then finally, the healthcare system crisis, or really the hospital financial crisis. And right now, that's in the hands of the Agency of Human Services. But those three are they're interconnected in many ways, and so I think there will be multiple committees that will be working on those issues. Maybe I'll turn it over to you, Barbara. Do you want to talk about we can just go down the line?
So I'll just sort of list the top priorities from, so I have 6. 5 are ones that were repeated themes that I heard from people. Like, so our studio audience, thinking of Chittenden 14. So some of them are ones that Tiff just talked about, making Vermont affordable. It is, and in particular, people say to me, Burlington is expensive, but we need to look at affordability as a state, which ties into property taxes and ed funding, and looking at how do we fund education. And I will just say, as a subline of this, is for the past 5 bienniums, I have put in a bill to have one school district.
because I think there's so much money that goes. I put in a bill to have one school district for the state, which Hawaii is the only state that has one school district. We have roughly 80,000 students in Vermont, and we're a very small student population, and we have 300 and something schools. We have superintendents. Fine. So anyway, we do need to look at how we spend money as well as how we finance it. Public safety and figuring out how to support our small businesses is something that I repeatedly heard, and sort of tied to that is people not being dealt with right away. What can we do at the state level to help law enforcement officers get hired and retained? Because it's obviously an issue in Burlington, but it is a statewide issue. And related to the crime issue is the court backlog, people not being dealt with for a really long time. So what the heck? Why not commit a crime? Because what's happening? But really, we know that predictable, swift punishment and knowing you're going to get caught are the best ways to deter crime. I've been on House Judiciary ever since my second biennium, and so juvenile and criminal justice are also part of sort of my professional work issues that I've worked on. Housing, which Tiff mentioned already, and that relates to not only the affordability issue, but having UVM house more of their students, which is putting pressure on things, looking at evictions and the unhoused, as well as people who want to downsize or get their first home. The other issue is healthcare, which again, I'm not going to say more, but it's more than just hospitals. It is people having access to healthcare providers and people complaining about how much their health insurance is and not being able to afford the copays to even go to the doctor. The last one that I added is looking at what we can do as a state to protect Vermonters from what might be happening at the federal level and what Plan 2020, Project 2025 might do. So some of the things that I've been looking at are any of the state laws that have federal guidelines as their measurements, which may go away, in which case Vermont needs their own guidelines. For example, how much plastic is acceptable in cosmetics, or there are lots of different ones like that. Also, looking at ways that we can do things now that won't cost more money, because we know that we're trying to keep Vermont affordable. So one bill is having the state commit to having a certain amount of their advertising dollars that they're already spending in state at our current local media outlets, so that we can be helping to support media at a time that they're very vulnerable. So I'd love to hear, I mean, there were so many other issues, but those were sort of the big thematic ones.
Politicians are notorious for loving to hear themselves talk, so I'm going to be intentional about not doing that, and just because a lot of things have already been said. But what was that? Oh, sorry. Rep. Mary Catherine Stone, Chittenden 14. I share the district with Barbara. I am the youngest Burlington elected, and I was the newest up until now, but somebody else is taking that title from me. I would say top issues are going to be uplifting and supporting public education. We talk a lot about education finance reform, but I think it's just as important to talk about the policy that drives funding. What are we funding and what needs to change? There are going to be some really hard conversations that we need to have, notably consolidation. We have a lot of schools for a very small state. A lot of them are in disrepair. We've had a moratorium on school construction since 2007. So as we know, as Burlingtonians, a lot of our schools need help right now just to function. We have kids in tents right now because of a PCB program that is an unfunded mandate on schools. So there's a lot that we need to look at as far as what is it we're funding, instead of just, we can change the funding structure and the mechanism all we want to, but until we tackle some of those harder topics like school consolidation, tuitioning. I read a statistic yesterday that $2.1 million went to school vouchers on ski academies in 2024 alone. Going to say that again. We spent $2.1 million on vouchers to ski academies in 2024. Those are not public schools. So those are fun facts that you don't really hear a lot about, but I think that we need to dive into and elevate. Supporting our healthcare workforce. When I'm not wearing a power suit, I'm wearing scrubs. I work as an occupational therapist at the hospital. I went into politics because I wanted to uplift the stories that I was hearing, not only at the bedside, but in the conference room with my colleagues. We, as you mentioned, we still have a crisis and a shortage of healthcare workers up at the hospital. So want to continue to tackle that. And then taking a deep dive into how we support our most vulnerable when it comes to housing and social services, which you mentioned. And the last final thing that I want to highlight is I really want to continue to expand engagement in the democratic process. If you looked at the numbers from this election, we had a really large number of undervotes for Chittenden 14, which means people just weren't voting, or they were voting for the top of the ticket, but where they weren't going all the way down. So one of my goals continues to be making sure that people know that y'all have a seat at the table. Your voices do matter. I want to hear and see from you, see you at the State House, hear from you. I really mean it. So that's another one of my goals, is to get y'all connected.
Again, I'm Tiff Bloomley. So I sit on House Appropriations, and my focus really tends to be, although I have certain, budget areas, housing, substance use, mental health, and the legislative budget. I guess I wanted to talk about kind of a broader view that I think is really important at this point. One is when we develop a budget each year, and we expect money to get appropriated for the things that that we prioritized, a lot of the money doesn't get out. It actually takes sometimes 2 years to get out. That isn't accountability. And so our committee is going to be spending time on that issue. It has affected Burlington in terms of the opioid money that comes from the opioid settlement. We're going to have a tough budget year. We are currently running a surplus that was kind of unanticipated, but that will be very easily swallowed up by the school budget deficit. So we're going to have to work really hard to try to discern our top priorities. I don't think there's a lot of stomach for new fees or taxes to support new expenditures. I think one of the things that I've prioritized, and I think our delegation feels strongly about, is helping Burlington not be on its own when it is asking for money. There are Rutland, Brattleboro, White River Junction, they need the same kinds of supports. But when Burlington goes to Montpelier, Burlington often is waved away because the perception is Burlington gets so much already. But if we can, in concert with those other towns, make the case for funding for, whether it is housing or it is investments in opioid, that I think that's going to be really important. That we make that we go in with allies, and that is perceived by all the other legislators in there. And with that, I'll turn to you.
Aaron Klepner, representative-elect from Chittenden 13. The voters were very clear on what our priorities, what the voters' priorities, what our community's priorities are. And I will say it wasn't just Burlington. So half not Burlington. Property taxes are clearly a burning issue across the state. And I think every legislator heard that. And in Burlington, public safety, property taxes and public safety were the very two clear top issues here. Property taxes, as Tiff and others said, these problems are all connected and they're all complicated. I mean, property taxes going upstream are related clearly to education spending, and the fastest growing component of education spending is healthcare costs for people working in the education system. Going downstream from property taxes, clearly high property taxes are a component of the unaffordability of housing, which is a component of general unaffordability. So they are all connected and they all sort of need to be resolved together. I will say with property taxes in particular, I really see the structure of the tax and the amount that we're spending on education as two separate problems, because you can disconnect them relatively easily. You can move the property tax, for instance, as the tax structure, the last two tax structure commissions and the National Educators Association have all recommended, moving it from this impossibly complicated hybrid of property value and income. Some people, I think 2/3 or more of Vermonters pay at least partially based on their income, moving it to purely an income-based education tax and off-property tax. So you can disconnect them, but that solves a bunch of problems, but it doesn't solve the problem of how much we're spending on education. And I absolutely agree with Representative Richardson that when we looked at this on the Tax Structure Commission, if Vermont were one school district, it would not even be in the top 10 in terms of square miles. Although for perfect transparency, one does have to admit that most of the top 10 are in Alaska, but not all of them. There's one in Nevada that's bigger than Vermont and stuff like that, but would not even be in the top 40 in terms of student count. 48th. Yeah. So almost, there are a lot of bigger school districts. And even if we deal with that, if we, right size the school system and the school buildings and the class sizes and have one supervisory union and one statewide school budget and all those things, we still have the issue of rapidly growing healthcare costs for the remaining people who work in the system. So we do have to address all of these things sort of simultaneously. I think the message to us as legislators was fix property taxes and make meaningful progress on affordable housing, healthcare access, healthcare costs, and education quality. So those are the priorities. Cat licensing is a local issue.
Yeah. Did you want to go and ask them?
Yeah, I mean, keep going.
Well, so there were.
For sharing the mic. No,
No, you go. It's fine. Or do you want me to?
you can't.
All right. Well, it's it's hard to organize ourselves. So there were kind of two questions. What? Not about licensing. We always kind of struggle with, well, how do we communicate? What do you want to hear from us? How often do you want to hear? And through what means? Do you read Front Porch Forum? Not everybody does. How else, how else would you like to hear about what's going on? And is what we're putting in Front Porch Forum useful at all? So that's the first question.
I'll just report to you that my husband reads everything you put out religiously, Tiff. And he reports back to me and he's very grateful. I mean, you put out a lot of information in a lot of different formats and some of it at great length and detail. And I know that takes a lot of time to do and I really appreciate it. And I know he does as well. And he's hard to please. He's a critic and yeah, yes, you get high praise for that. And I also want to say, Barbara, I am with you 100%. One school district, but I'm willing to compromise if it's 4, okay. Other thoughts?
I agree about your posts are very helpful, but also the Zoom cafes that you've done, the deep dives that you've done have been very, very good. I participated in those.
Yes, you've been the only one a couple times, right?
I have often like it's not about like yeah. Mills Forney. I often read front porch forum, but not always. So I find, and oftentimes I'll see something I might not be super interested in, so I won't read through the whole thing. Is there anywhere else I could go to get the updates? Is there like a newsletter or any other venues beyond front porch forum?
I can go.
Yeah.
We're all different. So that's the beauty of this thing that we do. I'm on social media all the time. I was yapping on my way up the hill doing a live video feed, just telling people where I was and what I was doing. So you can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn. Also, we all have websites as well.
How she knows how old I am.
We all have websites that we post on. And if you want to give us your email address, then we can get in touch with you that way as well. And I will speak on behalf of the Vermont House Dems. Should I announce what I'm running for? Sure. I'm running for assistant majority leader for external communications. And so that election will be happening this Saturday. And so one of my goals is to make it easier for you to have a variety of ways to keep abreast of what we're doing, updating our website, updating our social media, updating our newsletters.
Can I answer? So another thing that I recommend is the Vermont Legislature website is pretty amazing. And I've seen it evolve since I first started. So you can go on and see either live or you can see recordings of hearings. You can see the schedule. You can see who's testified. You can get copies of the written testimony. You can watch it on YouTube. And it's really worth, if people aren't that familiar with it, like I teach a couple classes at UVM and I've walked students through how to find things because sometimes people are like, wait, how do I find this? But it's amazing. It used to be you had to call and pay money to get a CD of something. And now you can testify remotely. And Representative Stone is right. Like I have watched people's testimony move bills so quickly that it's not funny, which is shocking because nothing usually happens quickly. But we do need to hear from people who are affected by these issues. And we hear from the lobbyists all the time, but it's all of you that really can do magic and help identify problems, solutions, and weigh in on things. So it's a really great way. You can see how we voted. I mean, you can find out lots of things. We each have our own web listing. And so they always have only on roll call votes because we do everything else on voice. But it is really an amazing way to watch the sausage being made.
So let me ask a question. So would it be helpful if the NPAs were to sponsor a citywide event where all the Burlington delegates to the House or the Senate or both could meet at Contoys like each December? You see, or you could do it by Zoom if you wanted to.
I would do it closer to town meeting, especially sorry, I'm speaking for you, Bram, but it wasn't so long ago I was in your seat. This time of year, we're like, these are the things that we hope are going to happen, but we don't know. But like come around town meeting day, we have a little bit better of an idea of how things are going to shake out. So I think that's a good idea. I would just not do it in December. I would wait until closer to March.
I also think that, Gabrielle and I, and now Bram and I have started doing coffees, so we just set up at Speeder and Earl's and commandeer a table and people stop by for any time between, 8 and 10. We're having one next Saturday. I find that really, really helpful. We heard about a story involving the insurance, Medicare, and the hospital. And it has led to a series of conversations about something that we are definitely going to try to change. Unfortunately, it has to change at the federal level ultimately, but there are things that I think we can do. So those conversations matter. And I think it is, in some ways, it's great because other people hear what other people are saying too. So they either know that they're not alone, or they learn something about which they want to learn more. Anyway,
Is that that's very labor intensive for you? See, I don't want to suggest that you need to go to more meetings. I'm trying to figure out some way that the whole delegation can address the whole community at the same time. That's the only reason I suggested it. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I think it's a yes, and we also have coffee hours, so it's fun though.
I have a quick question. I know when initially folks are running for office, you have your own website where you put your mission, the policies that you're running on. Post-election day, do you keep that website in order just directly to inform people, besides the social media, of course, or the state website? Do you keep that page?
It's subjective. I'll tell you that. I mean, I've led social media trainings with people that are like, I haven't updated my website in 14 years. Not kidding. But like, I don't have the password because I wrote it down and then I lost it. So no, not every legislator keeps their website up to date.
I'm aware like federal representatives do keep some.
Yeah, because they have a staff, because we don't have a staff. So that's,
My website is one of the ones that needs to be updated. It was on my to-do list, and I'd love a volunteer to help with it. But I do try to post stuff. I'm not quite the star of social media, but I do have a Facebook page, and I'm on Blue Sky and on Instagram. But it is hard. It is hard. Like I know Mary Catherine has incorporated it into her life. I have not, but I know it is important for people to know what's going on. And so I'm trying to think how we could get you what you're looking for. But
I'm trying to see something that is more unified, where representatives can share their information and details and updates. Because I feel like with respect to social media, it's like everybody has their own things they're putting out and doing different things where you locations. I mean, I know Front Porch Forum does exist, but to a certain degree, I feel like it's a very limited way of sharing information. But having a unified website where you can just throw in all the information, details, events, and questions and answers, and so on and so forth, might be useful. Yeah, yeah.
I was going to follow up on where Charlie's question was. And once you're elected, and other than coming to these NPA meetings, or when you're sitting in Montpelier, do you get together? Okay, so that for me, but as sort of audience neighbor, I don't know that, and I'm not party to that, and I think that is even sort of where Romeo's getting on a electronic version. I like Charlie's version of you guys all get together once a year and we get to be in contours together and hear you talking to each other and learning from your co-located information and co-operation. And that to me is really interesting.
I love that. And if y'all are willing to help set it up, I say
But once.
that'd be great.
Once a month.
No, oh yeah, no. Yeah.
Session, but I don't think you have time, frankly, but you can make time. But it's just the availability of content. The NPA can sponsor.
Well, look, I mean, we will definitely talk about that. For example, but we meet with the mayor every maybe a couple of months.
Yeah.
To talk about what is going on for the city. Oh, sorry. And what her legislative priorities are going to be, et cetera. So that is, that's something we do. We sponsor those forums online on different issues as a Burlington Democratic delegation. I think we have to probably try a lot of different things, use a lot of different things. And it would be great, Mary Catherine, in your new capacity, if we could develop a kind of a single place where some of our posts could go that are on Front Porch Forum, so that you don't have to try to go through past weeks, to look for them. So great idea. I'm sure she's up to it.
I'll do my best. Yes. We're gonna ask, how do you want to be involved in the work? How do y'all want to be involved in the work? Or maybe y'all have some stories of times that you have been involved and had success and found joy that you'd like to share.
I think one point I want to put out, if that's okay, is that I know we spoke of Front Porch Forum putting information and all that kind of stuff. If a way you guys can solicit volunteers to help out, some of the stuff that needs to be done, including like the website you said updated, would be great. Either, don't get me wrong, I do like Front Porch Forum, but as I said earlier, sometimes I feel like it's very limited, and it also, a lot of people post things that are completely unrelated to public policy, like looking for a cat, or which I have nothing against about cat pills. Sorry, but the thing is, something just dedicated to policy information and other things that are delicately important to what's happening at the state.
Right. No, but I mean, we love to hear people's ideas, and I've tried to look and see what other states are doing, what's worked well. But I think Tiff is right. What's going to work for the people in this room is going to be very different than the students at Champlain College and the students at UVM that are in our district. They want a different way, so we do need to look at different mechanisms. Going grocery shopping has been a great one for me because I always run into someone and I'm always home an hour and a half later and my spouse is like, what the heck? But right, you run into people, or when I go walking, people stop me. Sometimes it's very nice. Other times, I'm sure city councilors have that too.
Sometimes I have to shop out of town. It takes too long.
But that's the whole point of a citizen legislature. I am on the Parallel Justice Commission, and people contact me through that and say, oh my gosh, we need a bill to do this. Here's this awful problem that's happening. So I think what we do in our daily lives really needs to, I know it, we need to figure out how to interact with, when we're in Montpelier, we're not interacting with many people besides ourselves and lobbyists. But we do need to figure out how to have more interaction. People can email. And we can't really be on the phone sometimes in the State House, but email, text, I don't know.
I was wondering, in some of the points that you just raised, this says, are there ways we can get involved in that work and vice versa as well? Is there something that you would like us to do as a Ward 6 steering committee in order to, through the emailing that is sent out to seek volunteers to help out?
I'm just wondering if we could give updates through the NPA, so that people don't have to go on in addition to Front Porch Forum. So that maybe those go out as an addendum to the minutes or something.
I will admit, I find that email very refreshing, and a lot of stuff is on it too. So that'd be great.
Or we could rotate a column.
Sure.
In the new, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, either our updates or the newsletter.
I just want to say that, like wards 5 and 6 are full of people who have deep experience in a lot of different areas. And I've relied on them a lot for advice, to present at the forums that we've sponsored, and I followed their lead often. I think that I'm always looking for people who can help me better understand an issue that I don't understand. And even the ones I do understand, I'm only understanding it from a particular perspective, you know. So I think this is something that we need to find ways to do better, which is to kind of tap into the resources in our districts, and draw on the talent that's here. I don't know quite how to do that except in a kind of episodic way. You know, there's a need, I start asking questions, I find somebody, and so if you have any ideas about that, I mean, I think we could even put out a questionnaire on, you know, Front Porch Forum and ask people to identify specific skills they have or knowledge areas where they'd be willing to share with us. But if you have other ideas about how to engage what's here, because we're just 4 people and and we don't know everything. Well, I'll just speak for myself. I don't know everything.
Kind of on that note, I will say I have learned your point about having a lot of expertise in our community. You know, maybe the failing of democracy is you elect us and we really don't have the expertise that we need to make the decisions that we have to make a lot of the time. You're going to hear from Megan about a water bond. Like, what do I have to bring to this conversation? Well, I think we are the collectors of that community information. And I often will put out on Front Porch Forum questions. You know, sometimes, honestly, my mind is made up and I'm moving forward, but sometimes it isn't. And sometimes I need more information. I really want to get input from the community. And I can think of one of those things was whether or not to reopen the search for the police chief. And it was really interesting because the feedback that I got wasn't just opinions. There are people with a lot of human resources and recruiting experience in our community, and people responded both with their opinions, but also with that expertise. I have found the prompt to be really helpful to me in gathering the information about things that I don't feel like I'm struggling with a decision, or I don't have the expertise maybe that is needed. And, you know, that one, I wasn't really expecting to tap into this wealth of human resources and recruiters, but that is one of the things that came out of that. Because it often isn't just, those aren't surveys like so many people said X and so many people said Y. People have an opportunity to expound upon, what process they might go through and, what their reasoning is behind their opinion. It's been really helpful.
All right, folks, go ahead.
One thing that I found helpful, I can't remember the examples, but I know one was from Tiff and one was from Barbara, where I think it was a Front Porch Forum post where you gave an update and you said you need to call the governor. And that was very helpful to me, because if there's more of that we can be doing, I would say let us know, or come to Montpelier, or whatever. I think that was very helpful.
I'll just add very quickly, just to echo Nancy. I think, and actually Romeo too, I would find so valuable a single place to go to because you're already producing so much content and it's really hard to put it out in so many different places. If there's a way for us to, aggregate it automatically, maybe it's even by issue area, and I would be happy to help with this as well. But to think about how we can aggregate this stuff by issue area. So if it's housing, we can say, oh, well, fantastic. Here's all things that are going on. And oh, they need somebody to testify, or oh, they need this. It'd be a really interesting way to be able to follow the issue you're particularly passionate about. Because I know, especially the things that are facing our community, it's harder when you feel like you can't do anything. We're seeing the stuff that's happening downtown and you feel powerless because like, well, I voted, what else am I going to do? So if there's opportunities for us to take action, I think it just feels a lot better, and hopefully we could be helpful in the process. But I'd be happy to talk afterwards. I that's part of some of the work that I do. So I'd be happy to help with that.
Thank you. I'm gonna end because the director's been patiently waiting for us. Is Megan there? Okay. I think that might okay.
No.
Okay. So oh, okay, perfect. Okay. So we're gonna move on to the next one, and that will be the Birch Canal update. And Ruby Perry and Andy Simon, if you are here, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and we can get started. Andy and Ruby, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, hello. I'm Ruby Perry. I'm your neighbor in Ward 5 to the west. And I work with a group called the Friends of the Barge Canal. And thank you for the opportunity to tell you a little bit about what's happening there. The Friends of the Barge Canal is a nonprofit, all volunteer group that has been working for 3 years to basically conserve the Barge Canal, to unify that 28 acres that is now privately and publicly owned. In terms of the latest events that have been happening, we wanted to be sure that to catch you up on that. You may have heard that the bathhouse, spa, and retail building proposal has been withdrawn. Jovial King has withdrawn that. There was quite an extensive article in 7 days. If people have questions about that, we're leaving plenty of time for you to question, but I don't want to spend time, just saying what the reasons were unless people are interested. Also, so in response to that, the Friends of the Barge Canal proposed to Rick Davis now, who's the private landowner of 8 acres along Pine Street. We proposed for the second time. The first time was 3 years ago when the land first went up for sale. We wrote him a letter and proposed again that he donate that land, both parcels, to the 2 4-acre parcels, to the city. And he very respectfully said he was still hoping to be able to develop 4 acres of it. So that's one thing that has happened. Another thing is that Friends of the Barge Canal is right now about to put out a new petition. We started with a petition 3 years ago that has over 700 signatures on it, asking for the conservation of the land, 24 acres, which excluded the 4 acres that was under development already planned by Jovial King. Now we're calling it 28 acres. And it's about unifying that piece, and it's convening. We're asking for a convening of all the parties. So that would mean the municipality and the private landowners and the EPA. So those are all of the so-called stakeholders. I think that's the most pertinent things that are up to date, that'll catch you up to date. So Andy, go ahead and check in.
Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Simon. I live on Locust Street, also in Ward 5, and down the street from TIFF. And I've been working with Ruby and other people on Friends of the Barge Canal. And for the last 3 years, we are looking at a situation, of a real complexity in terms of the Barge Canal. And Zach, if you're there and you want to put up that map that I sent you, that would be great. I don't know. I'm not sure of the orientation in the room, if everybody can see the screen, but so we're looking now at a map of the Barge Canal. A little washed out in the slide in my screen, but you can see all the different parcels that are that the Barge Canal is broken up into. And you have a situation where there's private land. The two front parcels are private land along Pine Street. We're looking north and south. The middle section is owned by the city because the city originally was going to run the Southern Connector, now the Champlain Parkway, through there. They weren't able to do that because of the coal tar bubbling up when they started testing the soil. So the city now owns all the land in that middle part from the canal itself, from the Maltex building parking lot down to the BED parking lot. And on the other side of the canal, before you get to the railroad and the bike path, there are other plots that used to be connected to the parcels that connect now to Pine Street, but were disconnected when the city bought that middle part. So there's little pieces that come up to about almost 5 acres of land that are totally unusable for anything except conservation, because they're all wetlands and they're right up next to the railroad, but they still are privately owned. So all that to say that we're looking at a very complex land ownership situation. It's also complicated by the fact that the land itself, a large part of the land itself, is a federal Superfund site, so it's contaminated land, and it's land that nobody really is quite yet ready to do anything with. So what we're calling for, really, in terms of conservation of this land, which you can't see from this map, of course, but if you've ever been down to the Barge Canal, and Friends of the Barge Canal would love to take you for a walk down there just so you can see it. Our website is pinestreetbargecanal.org, and I'd love you to go to that website and contact us, and we would be glad to be your guide down to the Barge Canal, even though we have no official status, but we know it pretty well at this point. We've been working to conserve it. It's all grown up with various plants and shrubs. That's a better map. There we go. Plants and shrubs, and really lots of wildlife, fungi, fish, birds. It's just an incredibly alive place that lots of people don't know about. The Barge Canal also has, and I'm sorry that Megan isn't here or isn't here yet, because she could speak to the role of the Barge Canal in the stormwater and wastewater system in Burlington. It has an essential role in the CSO, the combined sewer overflow system, that comes down behind DPW, the DPW building, and discharges into the Barge Canal. So the Barge Canal is actually an essential overflow spot for the combined sewer overflow system in Burlington. So it's been providing lots of services, cleansing that water, containing toxins, managing stormwater, wildlife habitat, carbon sequestration. There's this huge benefit that Burlington gets from from the Barge Canal land as wild land. And we are trying to both educate people and advocate for this land as wild land in the very quickly developing south end of Burlington. So we'd love to have some questions.
Thank you, Andy. Any questions or suggestions?
Hi, Andy. This is Diane.
Hi, Diane.
Maybe just to help us with the map a little bit, can you move that one up just a speck? Yes. Okay. I just thought it was useful for people to see sort of where BED is and where that that wetland pond is sort of between.
Well, 645 is the DPW building.
Okay, so there's a pond there that not everybody knows about, and then it's sort of, yes, and then that flows up into the Barge Canal, which we can see. And I guess I'm just raising this so that everybody sort of gets how the water flows, and that all of the land surface from South Park and from the future Secor land all flows into this wetland that is most of where you have the yellow outline. I think people can probably see the yellow outline.
Yellow outline is the Superfund site.
Yeah. So all of that is recharge area, if I can use that word. And then to clarify, the 453 and 431 are Rick Davis's properties. Is that correct?
453 and 501. 431 is actually the Maltex building.
Okay, which is also his.
Yeah.
And then 405 is the city?
405 is the new Burlington City Arts building.
And does the city own that?
Yes.
Okay. And then 377 is where the farmer's market is?
Is where 377
Oh, that's right.
is where the South End Get Down and where the old Bagel Bakery and
yes, that's right. It's our access for ice skating.
Barge Canal Market and
Yep.
that is.
Okay. Yep. So who owns 345? Dealer.com?
No, that's on the other side of the street.
They own, I thought they bought
They do own.
Girl.
Yeah, that is dealer.com. That's the old bus station.
Yeah.
Where the outdoor farmers market is. Yeah.
And then, sorry, you dropped down, go back up. Okay. And then 339
is where CSWD is now and Resource. Owned by the city.
Yeah. And 351, who owns 351?
351 is owned by the railroad. Vermont Railroad.
The state.
No,
is what Zach's saying.
It's owned by private company, the Vermont Railroad.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And the green line, if you can see the green line on your screen, is the land that is currently under conservation zoning, city conservation zoning. So all of the land from the railroad up to the private land on Pine Street, 453 and 501 is currently under conservation zoning. Ultimately, we would love to see that whole the whole site under conservation zoning and even conserved more permanently, because conservation zoning can be changed by city council. But we would like to see it conserved more in perpetuity, which would have to be a different arrangement, a different legal arrangement.
So while we're staring at that map, let me mention also that Rick Davis is developing 453 now that we're looking at it. That's what he has been trying to develop for 30 years multiple proposals. The failure of the Nordic Spa was just the latest proposal that did not happen. And one of the reasons that it didn't happen is because it's very expensive to develop it to meet the guidelines that the EPA is requiring for the protection of the lake and the groundwater is too expensive. And that's despite the $6 million that the state awarded that for that purpose to 453 for Jovial to develop it. And when she realized, and because of her attempts to get the permits, that it was going to cost more than that, she requested from the state that they cover the cost of what it was going to take to develop on that site. And they declined to do that, which is, I think, sort of the general reason why she decided not to do it. And one of the points that we are making is that the cost to develop 453 is going to far exceed now whatever money the developer or the municipality might be able to reasonably expect from it. And that we can make that point now, and we can begin to let ourselves see that the land is actually offering something much more valuable to the city and to the residents, especially in light of the rapid development of the south end that is coming now.
Are there other questions?
Yeah, this is Bram Klubner. One comment, which is that the new administration in Washington may weaken the EPA rules, so it may become cheaper to develop that parcel. Just an observation. But a question, you guys are advocating for the conservation of the entire parcel if possible. Do you have an opinion on whether there's, well, do you have an opinion about remediating the contaminated soils?
Well, yeah. The EPA has a strong opinion about it. And their decision, the history of this site is pretty interesting in terms of citizen involvement in the site, because in 1992, EPA came in with a big remediation proposal that involved a major $50 million at the time, this is 30 years ago money, $50 million project to scrape off a lot of the contaminated soil, to dig up the canal where it was contaminated in the bottom, to create a huge toxic waste containment zone in the southwest corner of this site, and then open the rest for development. People in Burlington rose up immediately and massively and said, this is a terrible idea. You're going to put a 13-acre, 25-foot high containment vessel right next to Lake Champlain full of toxic waste? No. And the EPA was very surprised. They were a pretty new agency at the time, and they had never had this kind of defiance to their plans. And consequently, there was a commission that was named of local residents, local stakeholders, city officials, NPA officials, or representatives, that worked for 5 years and came up with a better plan. And the better plan was essentially leave it alone. When they got done with that, they recommended it to the EPA. The EPA studied it again and made a record of decision. They made a decision about it, which is essentially leave it alone. So they consider it, Bram, remediated. From a regulatory point of view, this land has a remedy. And the remedy is to leave it alone and to monitor it every 5 years, which the EPA does. So in fact, there is no active plan to remediate the soil in the sense of curing the problem of the toxicity of it. There are 56 contaminants of concern that are identified in this land and water, and there's no plan, and I think appropriately so, to try to figure out how to deal with them. The trees, the shrubs, the soil, the microbes in the soil, the various other parts of the ecosystem are already dealing with it. And our job as conservators of this land is, in fact, to try to impact it as little as we can, and still perhaps allow human access, official authorized human access to the site, but not by digging it up and trying to cart it away somewhere and giving somebody else our toxic soil, but by using a sort of more passive kind of remediation. And I would add to your point about 453, the spa site and the Rick Davis's hopes for development, is that in fact is not administered by the EPA, because in the 1990s, Rick came to that group, the council, the cooperative council that was dealing with this, and asked them to remove it from the EPA boundary, and they did. And so it's administered by the Department of Environmental Conservation, state of Vermont.
Which means it's a brownfield. They redesignated it a brownfield. But I wanted to say one more thing about remediation, is that we have worked with people from UVM, several different classes, who have looked at, in actually a nonprofit or a for-profit organization in Burlington that is very interested in doing extensive studies of how to actually begin to remediate the soil, depending on which toxin we're talking about. And so it's possible that it could become a test site for future learning for students, as more information, as more knowledge, as a building on the knowledge base. But it is not going to be an avenue for actually curing the soil of the problem. What has happened there is going to stay there until until somebody digs it up and hauls it somewhere else, or what the EPA will also allow, or DEC, is to pave it over so that it would block that avenue. And we are advocating that leaving it be as the remedy, that original remedy that Andy mentioned, is the best way. It's already working. It's containing it. It is not contaminating the lake right now, and it is not contaminating the groundwater.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? It's a fascinating place, and I'd be curious to know how many people have actually been down there and walked on that land. I'm seeing some hands going up. It's also thank you. It's also in fact an inviting place, or it seems to be an inviting place for unhoused people to set up camp, and there almost always at least one tent set up down there, sometimes 3 or 4. They don't last very long. It's kind of an inhospitable place. There's no access to water. There's no access to any services at all. In the summertime, there's mosquitoes and poison ivy and ticks. And when the rain comes, it can come pretty hard. And it's an old wetland, so it gets very wet very quickly. So our experience is that people come down there because they can get away, and nobody's going to probably bother them down there, because nobody is taking very much responsibility for the land at this point. But after a couple of weeks, a couple of days or a couple of weeks, we often find that the site's abandoned, and we let them go for a few more weeks, and then we organize people and help clean them up, usually picking up quite a few hypodermic needles in the stuff that we pick up. So it's an unfortunate situation, as we all know, the situation of that our state reps were talking about in terms of housing and coming up with services for unhoused people or marginally housed people. But the Barge Canal is also part of that.
I think maybe before we go, it's worth noting that the Barge Canal does hold a number of things that we can learn from it. I mean, the natural history of the Burlington waterfront, the indigenous history of the Burlington waterfront, and certainly the industrial development that has that is the basis of Burlington's prosperity, is there in that space that can be seen, and the results of it we can see. And it would be useful to have educational signs, for example, that would explain what has happened there. And we could learn from it so that we don't continue to do things the same way. There are many possibilities for what could happen in an almost passive way, that would be much more beneficial than another office building or a Nordic Spa or a bowling alley or whatever else. And I want to say one more thing. The EPA and DEC specifically say you cannot build housing there and you cannot have any kind of childcare. So thank you, everyone, for listening.
Better off protecting our land and using it for stormwater, as we know that the floods are, augmenting, and that we need to deal with stormwater in this city. Thanks. Thanks for showing us that.
Thank you. And I don't know if Megan is still here. She's not online still. No. Okay.
Romeo, I do know that DPW had actually expressed interest in coming to talk to us about the bond twice.
Okay.
They said they wanted to come this fall and that they wanted to come again early in the winter because it's such a big issue. So I don't know why they didn't show up tonight, but we should be able to hear from them maybe in February.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And yeah, go ahead.
A quick plug for them. I know it'd be great to have them here, but they were at the Ward 5 meeting a couple weeks ago, which if you are interested in seeing that presentation and that type of discussion, you go back and watch that meeting, but obviously keep trying to make the effort to get them here too, so you can have questions answered as well.
Where do you find those meetings?
Well, we have them on YouTube or right almost immediately after those meetings, but then on Town Meeting TV, they're available.
Okay, perfect. Any additional questions, announcements, suggestions to end the meeting today? Okay, I want to thank our representative for being here and also congratulate on your election win. And I hope, yeah. Yes, of course. I haven't forgotten you yet. I'm sorry. I'm still thinking about the electric charging thing, so, no, I'm just kidding. But congratulations again, and of course, Councilor Shannon for being here as well. We're grateful to you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, there's 200 and they got requests for 80, so
Oh, really?
requested now.
Oh, man, okay. And on that, if there's no any objection, I'm gonna call the meeting to